want to tell you something my mother never wanted me to know. For 18 years, I lived inside a story that was carefully built to protect me from a truth. A truth she decided to carry completely alone for the rest of her life. My mother raised me by herself from the time I was 2 years old, working a cleaning job every morning and running her sewing machine from home every night. I used to wake up sometimes at midnight and see the lights still on under her bedroom door, and hear that quiet mechanical sound that I now realize was the sound of pure love. Whenever I asked about my father, she would smile softly and say he was someone who simply could not stay. Because I trusted her completely, I accepted that answer and never pushed further, never imagining that the real answer was something she had chosen to bury so deeply. Last year, she passed away after a short illness that moved faster than either of us were prepared for. In the weeks after, I found myself going through her belongings alone in her bedroom, slowly. Finishing felt too much like accepting something I wasn't ready to accept. At the very bottom of a small wooden box beneath some old photographs and saved currency notes, I found a letter folded 3 times with my name written on the front in her handwriting. Not sealed, just folded like she had written it and then spent 15 years deciding. The letter was dated 15 years earlier, meaning I was 3 years old when she wrote it. My hands were shaking so badly by the time I unfolded it. I had to press it flat against the floor just to see the words clearly. She began by saying she hoped with everything she had that I would never need to read what came next. Then she told me the truth, which was that my father had not left because life made it impossible, but because his family gave him a choice between keeping me and keeping his inheritance, his family name, and the comfortable future they had planned for him. And he chose all of those things over us without looking back. My mother was 22 years old, alone and pregnant with no money and nowhere to go, when she made the decision to keep me and disappear to another city entirely. And she built our entire life from nothing without a single day of help from anyone. But the part of the letter that destroyed me completely was near the end, where she wrote that 2 years before she wrote those words, she had seen him by accident in a crowded market, and he was there with his wife and 2 children, well dressed and comfortable, and everything she had once imagined a future might look like. And he saw her too, and he looked at her for a long still moment. And then he turned and kept walking like she was a stranger, like she was no one. Like the woman who raised his daughter alone for years was simply someone he had passed on the street. She wrote that she stood there for a long time after he disappeared into the crowd. Not because she was still hurting over him, but because watching him choose again, in that single moment, confirmed every decision she had ever made. She walked home that day knowing with complete certainty that she had been right to protect me from a man who could look in the direction of his own child's mother and simply keep walking. I read that letter 4 times sitting on her bedroom floor with the sewing machine still in the corner. And I kept looking at it while I read because that machine suddenly meant something different to me. Every midnight sound from my childhood, every light under the door, every small sacrifice I had taken for granted was rewriting itself in my memory into something so much larger. She never complained, not once across my entire childhood, never made me feel like a burden. Because she made a decision early on that I would grow up feeling completely loved. And she kept that decision every single day of her life until the very last one. That night, I sat alone in her room for hours and I talked to her out loud like she could still hear me. And I told her I finally understood, and I told her she was more than enough, she was everything. And I told her I was sorry it took finding a letter at the bottom of a wooden box for me to fully see, and that he either does not know I exist or has spent decades choosing not to look. And I've thought about reaching out more times than I can count, some days wanting answers. But what I know without any uncertainty is that the person who ran a sewing machine at midnight, who walked home alone with her head up after being looked through like a stranger, who folded a letter with my name on it and then spent 15 years deciding I deserved to be protected, was not a woman who needed him then or ever. If your mother is still alive, please call her tonight, not tomorrow, not this weekend, tonight. Because some of us are sitting in empty rooms talking to people who can no longer answer. And the distance between having that chance and losing it forever is so much smaller than you think. Subscribe to CARNICERO, share this with someone whose mother is still here, and I will see you in the next one.